my friends. Welcome. Glad everybody is here. J.R. Dukes at your service. If you're new to the channel, welcome. This is the home of the free-minded patriots. We are just going to take a quick moment. I just hit the go-go buttons. Make sure everybody can hear me loud and clear. Hello to everyone on YouTube, all our friends on Twitch, and of course on the X platform. You can always find me right here at YouTube, simply at J.R. Dukes, and on X it's simply Reach J.R. Dukes. Pretty easy to remember, and of course all my contact information is scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Today we're going to have an abbreviated edition of my program tonight because I really want to focus in on one thing that we're going to talk about, and that is this subject that we talked about yesterday. It's been all over the news today. I mean, everybody seems to be talking about this, and it has to do with this guy by the name of Garcia. This is the individual that has been sent to a maximum security prison in El Salvador. We've talked about this prison many times on this particular program. It is an interesting prison, and I got some points that I want to make. I will say this. It's been a while since I've had a subject that has really resonated with so many people. I have had a lot of people contacting me, at least a handful of people between text messages and emails, contacting me with some very strong opinion is probably the best way to say it. And I want to break down the questions and break down some of the concerns. So we're going to drill into that in 1 second. By the way, it is technically an open platform today, even though it's an abbreviated program. If you'd like to join, ask a question by phone or join by video, I'll go ahead and put the link in so that anybody that would like to join can go ahead and join. So here is the link that I'm pasting in right now. Just click on it and the instructions should be pretty straightforward and simple. Again, if you're a returning visitor, returning subscriber, you are my YouTube family, and I appreciate each and every one of you. If you like to see the end of indoctrination and you would like the facts as they are, and I only deal in facts. I don't care about basically being loyal to any particular party. The reality is I'm all about what I call that free mind, thinking for yourself, making your own decisions. You don't even have to agree with me. It's not a problem. We simply want to work towards the goal of making sure we understand the world that we're living in so we can live our best life possible as a result. There's just so much false information and indoctrination that's out there today. And we really need to take a deep breath and step back and look critically at different subjects that are going on right now. Now, y'all that have been following me on my channel know that I am a very fervent supporter of Donald Trump, and that has not changed, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. But that also does not mean that I blindly follow anybody or everybody for whatever reason. We have to look at the facts. And by the way, Zach, thanks for being here. I appreciate you being here. Yeah, Biden is supposed to be making a speech tonight. That's going to be interesting. I will bet he's going to be using a teleprompter, Zach. Just a guess, but we'll see. We'll see exactly how that goes, right? I'm sure he's going to have a lot of aides and a lot of teleprompters going on. Obviously, on this channel, Zach, as you well know, for a very long time, we talked about Joe Biden and the cover-up that was going on. And of course, now everybody is either trying to write a book or make money or get attention by just saying, hey, I was talking about this the whole time. I was one of the original whistleblowers. I was one of the original people saying, hey, we got a problem. And it's just a lie. More lies, and I may make a video on that at a later time. So again, hello to everybody on YouTube, and of course on the X platform. Got several people on there already. Got about 8-9 people. Thanks, appreciate everybody being here. And Zach, thanks for your comments. And yes, I guarantee he will have a teleprompter as we go through this subject. If you have any questions or any comments, please don't hesitate. Put them in the comments below. I will definitely get to them and answer all of them that I possibly can. So anyway, tonight we are going to be talking about this guy that's been all over the news. I'm sure that we're all familiar with the situation that's been going on at the White House pertaining to, let's see if I can get this to pull up on the screen, pertaining to this press conference that happened yesterday involving this guy that was here in our country. His name is Kilmar Abrego Garcia, if I'm saying it correctly. I'm just going to refer to him as Garcia. There is a lot of speculation as to what the facts are pertaining to this case. And again, I want to start off and I want to be very clear. I am a very loyal patriot. I'm an American through and through. I always say when I bleed, I promise you, I bleed red, white, and blue. I am definitely a Trump supporter. I love what he stands for, and I love the direction he's taking our country in. But I have to tell you, I am very troubled by this particular subject that is going on. And I have heard from many of you, and your concerns are well founded. I don't necessarily disagree with anybody. I just want us to look at certain comments and compare them to the facts, whatever the facts may be. That's what I deal in as facts. If we can prove something, then we take it as true. I don't want to let emotion or anything else get in the way of understanding what is really happening. And I love talking about things pertaining to the law, things pertaining to justice. It is very important that we make sure our country is operated under the rule of law, just full stop. I mean, this individual, the facts as I'm going to show them to you are very concerning to me, and we're going to drill directly into the questions and comments that I have received. So without further ado, let me go into some prepared marks here. I'm going to break through the noise tonight and get to the truth, because that's what I do on this channel. I support President Trump. I've supported him from the beginning, but that doesn't mean I rubber stamp every action from every corner of his administration, especially when the facts take us in another direction. And of course, tonight we're talking about Mr. Garcia. This case is a mess. And it's one we should be honest about. Here's what really happened, and then I'm going to show proof on this this state of facts that I'm about to give you. This Mr. Garcia came here at age 16, fleeing gangs and threats in El Salvador. ICE, the U.S. government, via ICE, detained him in 2019. Now, the government alleged that he had gang ties based on a confidential informant. I got some interesting information on this so-called confidential informant and the officer that swore out this original affidavit that led to his original arrest back in 2019. So stay tuned. Now, the government alleged he had these particular ties, but this Mr. Garcia never stated he had any affiliation with the gang. Now, that's the only thing that he was in jail for, that he was detained for, was this allegation that he belonged to the gang. But here's the kicker. When the full evidence was reviewed, the same judge that determined there was not enough proof to say he was part of any gang, no criminal record this individual had, he had no conviction. This guy decided, this judge is the same judge that originally put him in jail and kept him in jail. At the end of the day, the same judge said, hey, you know what? This guy has no ties to MS-13. This guy is definitely in fear of losing his life or coming to great bodily harm. And as a result, this same judge entered an order that prevented him from being removed to El Salvador. He could be removed to another country, but that would trigger another due process of the law, as we would call it. All right. So let's go ahead and drill down into the exact facts. I want to talk about exactly what happened. But at the end of the day, my friends, what we're going to find out, unfortunately, this is an individual who was home with his child. He has a 5-year-old child that apparently has some type of disabilities. Some reports that I have read state that the other 2 children he has with his wife, and I'm going to show proof that he is married to an American woman, a woman that is a citizen and she's here legally. All 3 of their children, unfortunately, have some type of disability, some type of problem that they're working on. It's just a different narrative than what we're being told in the media. I just heard on Fox News Judge Janine, and I love her. I love this woman. I heard her say unequivocally, oh, this guy has ties to MS-13. 2 judges said he had ties to MS-13, and that is a fantastic lie. There is no truth to support that. He was in jail. He was incarcerated basically in 2019, but it had nothing to do with the crime. He was there on a detainer pending his removal from the country. And this, again, the same judge said, hey, we're going to hold him in jail. What you have to remember is when you're incarcerated, when you're in jail for something that involves immigration, the standard of proof to keep you in custody is very, very low. It's just if the judge basically thinks it's a good idea to keep you in jail, that's what they're going to do. They're going to hold you. And based on this confidential informant, based on what this particular police officer that we're going to talk about, because he's got his own problems now, based on what he told the court in a sworn affidavit, and again, breaking news on this that we're going to talk about in just a minute, based on this so-called information, the judge said, okay, twice he denied him bond to get out of jail, and he kept him incarcerated. At the end of the day, this same judge had a trial, had the legal proceedings move forward, and he decided he would not be removed from this country back to El Salvador. Full stop. That's the truth. And I'm going to show the proof right now. We're not going to waste any time talking further about it. And folks, I got to tell you, what really bothers me in this whole situation is the administration, the Trump administration, is lying to us. I really can't say it any other way. Let's take a look at this clip really quick, and then we're going to discuss it, because what you're going to see is President Donald Trump, he's very smart. I mean, this guy's not stupid. He knows what he's doing. He never answers the questions himself as to why this Mr. Garcia was picked up at home in front of his kid, rushed to a military jet, and flown immediately to El Salvador. They keep these individuals in what's called the frog position. They're bent over at all times. They shaved his head on the spot, and they took him to prison. I get it. If this guy is an MS-13 gang member, I have no sympathy for him whatsoever. But a lot of times in the law, a lot of times in life, what happens is we have two competing interests that we have to push against each other and see which one is going to rise to the top, so to speak. I had it explained to me by a lawyer friend of mine many years ago that it's kind of like where the rubber hits the road. It's the tire pushing against the street. You have two valid competing interests, and the Supreme Court has to decide what interest is the most important pursuant to the Constitution. And that's kind of what's going on here. None of us want terrorists in our countries. None of us, well, at least the people that I associate with, we don't want illegals coming here across the border without there being some type of process for them to come into the country. We don't want what Joe Biden had, just this open nonsense, this open borders. None of us want this to happen. And at the same time, we have to make sure that we don't get a branch of the government that's out of control. And yes, that does apply to President Donald Trump. None of us, if you think about this, just pretend for a second that this Mr. Garcia is not an MS-13 member. Just consider it for 1 second, all right? Well, how do you feel about it now? This guy was taken into custody with a valid order from a court stating he shall not be returned to El Salvador. He was pulled away from his child, taken straight to an airplane, and flown off. I mean, it's just unconscionable that this has happened, and it has to be corrected. At first I thought, oh, you know what? These are a bunch of liberals trying to protect the narrative, trying to make Donald Trump look bad, make his administration look bad. That's exactly what I thought was going on. And yes, I get it. I know the guy has tattoos. I have not seen his tattoos. I really hate to think the guy's in a maximum security prison because of tattoos. But I digress. Let's go ahead and take a look at this particular clip that I want to share with you. I want to forward it to the part where you'll see President Trump doesn't answer these questions directly. What he loves to do, and he's very smart for doing so, is he will simply refer it over to Pam Bondi or to others to answer the question. And it's important to listen how they actually answer these questions, because it's revealing. It's interesting. Of course, in my opinion, President Trump does not want to be called out or shown later to have lied, and then they have a videotape that they can just keep playing. So let's go ahead and let's take a peek at it.
Very strong facilities, and they don't play games. I'd like to go a step further. I mean, I said it to Pam. I don't know what the laws are. We always have to obey the laws, but we also have homegrown criminals that push people into subways.
Okay, here's where the Attorney General was discussing it.
Go ahead, let's hear the question from this very low.
This is where CNN was asking the question.
Low rated. Which one is that?
The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador.
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
See how he
Sure,
refers it?
President.
Smart.
First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, two courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he.
Folks, this is a lie. It's just a lie. And I'm going to prove to you that it's a lie. Yes, she's playing loose with the words here. Originally, when he came to the country at age 16, he was in the country illegally. He claims he was fleeing violence from gangs in El Salvador. That's on the record. That's his story. But he was technically illegal at age 16. That's kind of where she's playing loose with the facts. But at no time did any judge determine that this individual was or has been in the gang, any gang, much less MS-16. It's just simply not part of the record. And I can literally prove that to you by looking at the documents that I have and looking at the recent Supreme Court case that was just handed down just a few days ago. And I can assure you the story is only going to get bigger from here. I hope they change course, but again, let's continue with
And he
this.
was illegally in our country. Right now, it was additional paperwork that needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs.
You know how you know she's nervous and you know how she's lying? There's a big tell she has. She refers to President Donald Trump as president, not even Mr. President. So listen to her words. Clearly, she's extremely nervous. She knows she's lying. She's trying to put the best spin on it, period. I've never heard of any administration official refer to the President of the United States as anything other than Mr. Trump, Mr. President. I've never heard president.
If they wanted to return him,
I'm going to back it up just a digit.
That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if,
Boom.
as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs. If they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
So will you return him?
And you are doing a great job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wait a minute. Could you just also respond to that question? Because, it's asked by CNN.
And I believe this is Stephen
always
Miller.
ask
He's going to
for
kind
the
of parrot
slant.
the same thing.
Because they're totally slanted because they don't know what's happening. That's why nobody's watching them. But would you answer that question also?
Yes, gladly. So, as Pam mentioned, there's an illegal alien from El Salvador. So, with respect to you, he's a citizen of El Salvador. So, it's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens as a starting point. As two immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13. When
I just don't understand how they get away with these lies. It's just not true. What is true is there is a order from the same judge stating that this individual is not to be deported to El Salvador. He could technically be deported to another country, but he cannot be deported to El Salvador. This is just facts. And here's another thing to consider. If this individual was a member of any gang, much less MS-13 or MS-16, whatever the gang affiliation name is properly, if he was tied to a gang somehow, he would be ineligible under U.S. law to enter the country, much less have asylum in this country. So just keep that in the back of your mind.
President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States.
That is true. That's what I just said. If he was tied to some type of gang affiliation, think this through with me. If he was tied to some gang affiliation, then why is there an order from 2019 from a judge of the United States ordering the government not to deport this individual, Garcia, back to El Salvador? Think that through. he would be ineligible. They have things that contradict each other from their own mouth.
So he had a deportation order that was valid, which meant that under our law, he's not even allowed to be present in the United States and had to be returned because of the foreign terrorist designation. This issue was then, by a district court judge, completely inverted, and a district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here. That issue was raised to the Supreme Court, and
that was not the decision from the district court judge that went up to the Supreme Court. Again, we'll take a brief look at it here in a minute. We read it on yesterday's video. It's only 4 pages long. There was no finding based on what he said that the administration was ordered to invade El Salvador and kidnap this individual. That's hyperbolic. It's just flat lies.
The Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful, and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the president could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13.
It does not say that in the order, and that is at best a stretch of the ruling. It was 9-0 finally, but there were several dissents, as we read yesterday, in that opinion, specifically from the liberal individuals on the court, but they wanted to speak with one voice, and they did return it back to the lower court as they normally do, the lower district court, to basically work on this case further and to clarify terms that this judge used in her original order. And they definitely gave the White House a lot of wiggle room in this particular matter, but what he is saying is at best a lie, and it's at a minimum a huge overstatement.
Which is, I'm sure you understand, rapes little girls, murders women, murders children, is engaged in the most barbaric activities in the world, and I can promise you, if he was your neighbor, you would move right away.
So you don't.
He again, this is what you call like a straw man argument or different types of arguments. They're saying that other people, other illegal immigrants have committed crimes, and he's trying to conflate these type of crimes with Garcia. There's just no evidence of that. None whatsoever, ladies and gentlemen. Admittedly, he has tattoos. I have not personally seen or evaluated his tattoos, but how would you like to be spending the rest of your life in a very violent prison in El Salvador because someone judged, hey, you have tattoos? Take them away.
You don't plan
But
to
the
ask for
Supreme
it.
Court's
You're getting
asking
that.
to,
And
that-
what was the ruling
Is that your
in the
position?
Supreme Court, Steve? Was it 9-0
Yes, it was a 9-0
in our favor?
in our favor against the district court ruling, saying that no district court has the power to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. As
That none of that is written in the order. That what he just said is not written in the order. He's making an inference, and I would say that that he's just flat wrong on
Pam
it.
said, the ruling solely stated that if this individual at El Salvador's sole discretion was sent back to our country, that we could deport him a second time.
Well,
No version of this legally ends up with him ever living here because he is a citizen of El Salvador.
Well, he again, some of that's true, some of that's a stretch. If this Garcia is returned to the United States, the administration could decide to deport him to another country. That is true. However, what they conveniently leave out is at that time, Garcia would be entitled to due process of law. He'd be in the system, so to speak, like a lot of immigrants are in the system. A lot of illegal immigrants are in the system. They are all entitled to due process law. Just because Biden, in my opinion, committed all these crimes by not enforcing the laws of our land and let all these illegals in to our country does not mean that this president can basically violate others' rights. It's just the way it works, ladies and gentlemen. And today we're talking about people that are not citizens of our country. But what, God forbid, if somebody was swept up that was a citizen? Again, there was no due process between this guy being picked up and him being put on an airplane. Now, the Supreme Court did say in the future there has to be some type of due process before someone is deported, but we'll talk more about that here in a minute.
That is the president of El Salvador. Your questions about it per the court can only be directed to him.
I asked.
¿Usted lo liberaría, presidente Bukele?
Can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm most of them suggesting that I smuggle a terrorist into the United States.
It's
I mean,
always
how
the
could how can I smuggle? How can I return him to the United States? I smuggle him into the United States, or whether I do it, of course, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, so that's a perfect out. First of all, I like this president of El Salvador. I think he has done a lot of good for his people. But if you look at the president's face right there, if you can see it on your screen, he's got a nice big smirk on his face. We all know what's going on, and on some level, I don't blame him. He's trying to protect the American people, but at the same time, ladies and gentlemen, we have to make sure we don't trample on the Constitution just in the heat of the moment, so to speak. I mean, the law is the law. The law will get these people out of our country if they don't belong here, but we all have to make sure we stick to the Constitution of the United States. It's really, in my estimation, just that simple. And it is so important that we follow our own laws, that we don't allow our emotions just to take us over and we start saying, hey, we have to get these people out. I don't care who they are, send them to a prison like that. It's just unconscionable. And this man has children here in the United States that are American citizens. He has a wife that is an American citizen. I had someone today text me and they said clearly that, oh, I heard from another program and this guy's an attorney. He told me that, or he stated that this guy's not even married. Well, just because someone might be an attorney doesn't really carry any weight with me. And if it carries weight with you, then go ahead and send an email over to Michael Cohen and see what he thinks about everything and believe him. Because Michael Cohen is also an attorney. We remember Trump's ex-fixer. I'm sure we all remember that. So what the point I'm trying to make is it's absolutely meaningless. It does not mean anything in my estimation. So let me shed some light on this particular document and see if we can go over this together, because I want us all to be able to see this. Let me just minimize this. There we go. This might be a little better. All right. These are sworn pleadings in a district court, in a court of law. When you sign these pleadings, if you have made a material omission or if you lie to the court, there's something called perjury that you can and likely will face in front of any court that you purposely lie or admit, especially as what you call a officer of the court, aka an attorney, and other individuals that work for the court system is considered an officer of the court. So these are sworn pleadings, and this is in this particular district court where the Supreme Court took an emergency appeal brought there by the Trump administration. All right. So I want to look at the facts of this. Before I do, let me double check my friends over here and see if anybody has any particular questions. Zach, I always appreciate your comments. This contradicts what I've heard. Absolutely, Zach. That is the reason I'm having this program tonight, just to air all of these different things everybody's heard. Just a few minutes ago, I had Fox News on in the background. I guess it's been a couple hours now. Or an hour or so ago, I had Fox News in the background. I love Fox News. I love a lot of the people that's on there. I heard Judge Janine just blurt out that this guy has been found to be an MS-16 or MS-13 member, whatever the number is. He's been found to be a member of this gang. And that's just false. There is no proof submitted that this guy is a gang member or was affiliated with MS-13, period. Unequivocally. It's just not there, and it's not in these pleadings either. There is no there. And listen, I want to be clear. If anybody has any proof to the contrary, hey, I'm happy to say I'm wrong if I'm wrong and share it with everybody. I have no feelings about the matter as far as being right. This is not about being right. This is about making sure we're not indoctrinated. This is about making sure we abide by our Constitution. This is about holding our leaders accountable, whether they are Democrats, whether they are Republicans. And again, I love President Trump. I love his administration. I really hope they do an about face and they correct this. This is crazy. And Zach, you hit the nail on the head. This contradicts everything. And again, Zach, I have had a lot. I think I've had 4 or 5 people text, email me. 1 or 2 of them are friends of mine, and they're just not happy with what I have to say about this. They did not like yesterday's program. I get it. It's not a comfortable subject, but the truth is the truth. Just that simple. Rosemary Fier, appreciate you being here, lady. As always, thank you for being a friend of the program. It's always good to have you here. Gang affiliations is used. We're going to read it together here, Zach, and we will see exactly what they say about gangs, and then we're going to take a quick peek at the actual documents released by the U.S. Supreme Court. You don't have to take my word for it. I want to show you what's in the court papers. You don't have to believe me. It's really just that simple. Zach goes on, I am really tired of the back and forth. Yeah, accusations like I'm tired of it too. But on this channel, as you are well aware of, it's all about not being indoctrinated. It's all about the truth. It's all about being able to look at the facts yourself and make up your own mind. Again, you don't have to agree with me. Let's just say, for example, you have a different opinion. I'm okay with that. It's not a problem. We can agree to disagree. But until and unless the administration comes forward with proof, my opinion is my opinion. And each of us should be troubled by a man that can be home. I mean, and we'll take a look at this in a minute. The public published reports that I've read show that this guy, I think he does sheet metal work or something. He's gainfully employed. He supports his family. He's taking care of his own child. He shares with his wife. He's taking care of her 2 children from a previous marriage, if I understand it correct. And I believe all 3 of the children have some type of issue or disability that both parents are lovingly taken care of. Now, again, they could be blowing smoke up my you-know-what. I get it. And that's what the mainstream press, I should say the conservative press, is not really the mainstream press. I know a lot of the conservative commentators and just other individuals with that thinking, that narrative, are pretty well saying is that basically I'm drinking the Kool-Aid of the left, and that I'm basically indoctrinated myself. I'm believing the lies. Well, I'm not believing nothing. I'm believing what I can verify, and that's what I'm trying to get to the bottom of. American Nana, it's always a pleasure to have you in the conversation. Thank y'all all for being here, and I appreciate everybody saying hello. So once again, thanks to everybody on the X platform, our friend on Twitch, and we've got 4 or 5 on YouTube right now, and about 10 on X. Thank y'all all for being with me tonight. I sincerely appreciate it. We're over 7,200 subscribers already, and trust me, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate each and every one of you. I definitely don't take any of that for granted. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take a look at this document. This is a document that was filed on behalf of Garcia with his attorney's sworn pleadings to the court. Now, let's take a look at this here. We're just going to read a little bit of this because this is a very lengthy document. I just want to hit a couple highlights here. For years, Garcia lived in Beltsville, Maryland with his wife, plaintiff Jennifer Valquez Sura, a U.S. citizen, and their 3 special needs children. And they have abbreviations for the children because the children, of course, are minors. It says Garcia, a citizen of El Salvador. So one point I got to make about this is sworn testimony that he is married and his wife's name is blank. This is signed by an attorney, aka a officer of the court. Boom. That's proof enough for me, unless I know otherwise. So let's just let it go with that. He's a citizen of El Salvador, came to the United States as a teenager to escape gang violence targeting his family. He has never been charged with any crime, again, in a sworn pleading. In 2019, the government commenced removal proceedings. Garcia moved for a release on bond. Now, pay attention closely, because you heard Pam Bondi and you hear many others say that twice a court found him to be an associate of MS-13. They say twice he was denied being released from prison effectively, or at least words to that effect. And in reality, the judge refused twice to release him on bond, because remember, the standard of evidence, the standard of proof to keep an illegal immigrant in custody and not release them on bond is much less than what a trial court would be. Of course, we all know that a trial, the evidence standard is beyond a reasonable doubt. That's a very high standard. In this particular case, to keep an illegal immigrant that has alleged ties, and remember, this is sworn in an affidavit by a police officer. We're going to talk about that police officer in a second. And it's also sworn in an affidavit. And this is one of my favorite things that we talk about on this channel, by a confidential source. I hate that. I wish that that was not even allowed in court. Again, it's just my opinion. But friends, this comes up way too many times. And this is something that needs to change in our system. And one final point on that, again, we just have all this conflation going on. I heard a commentator earlier talk about the fact that I know this guy's father of the year. And then on the other hand, this another illegal immigrant killed somebody else. Well, I get it. I get the emotions. I get people that are mad. But Garcia is not the other person that was convicted or alleged to have committed another crime. We have to stop conflating these cases. We have to seal our border. We have to make sure our laws are followed. But folks, please don't allow these people to drive the narrative, confuse you, confuse the issue, and make you think that you're anti-American or somehow you're a liberal or some kind of woke liberal, which is a terrible thing to be, just because you're questioning. You're questioning what they're telling you. Okay, it's really just that simple in my estimation. And I think if you think about it, you'll agree. So in 2019, the government commenced removal proceedings. Garcia moved for release on bond. The government opposed, claiming he was an MS-13 gang member. The government offered two pieces of evidence. This is their evidence, okay? Garcia was wearing his Chicago Bulls hat and hoodie. And second, quote, a vague, uncorroborated allegation from a confidential informant claiming he belonged to MS-13's Western clique in New York, and New York was a place that Mr. Garcia had never lived. Yes, end quote. You've heard that right. That is their evidence against this man. I'm not making this up. This is in the legal documents, the legal papers. It goes on. The immigration judge was, quote, reluctant to give evidentiary weight to the respondent's clothing as an indication of gang affiliation, but nevertheless refused to release Garcia on bond. That is the two times you keep hearing the news say, folks, that this guy's guilty of something because a judge kept him in jail twice, denied him. Well, that's spin, and the way they word it, it's essentially a lie. A judge didn't rule he did anything wrong and keep him in jail. A judge ruled under the very low standard of evidence that they have in these type of cases, that because of these allegations, because of this weird affidavit that's confidential, and this police officer's affidavit that we're going to talk about in a minute, hey, you know what? I'm going to do the safe thing and I'm going to leave him in jail. So yes, he was denied bond twice. Again, the same judge ruled that he had no gang affiliation after looking at all the evidence, and he also entered an order of protection to keep Mr. Garcia from being returned ever to El Salvador. All right, let's continue with this. Moving on this here. It says that nevertheless, he refused to give Garcia the bond. Garcia then sought relief from the removal. During a full evidentiary hearing, Garcia offered his own sworn testimony that his wife, Vaquez Sura, so there it is again, that he is married, and in sworn testimony, it's him now stating that he has a wife. Why do I keep mentioning this? This is one of the rumors going around on the internet, and I actually had an individual contact me today saying an attorney on another channel on YouTube said, this guy's not married. It's a sham. It's a lie. Well, you know, I'm reading it to you folks. You know what's going on. See, Miss Sura and voluminous, meaning a lot of evidence showing he was not a gang member and was eligible for protection under federal law. The immigration judge ordered withholding of removal on October 10th, 2019. The judge, this is the same judge that originally kept him in jail twice, found that Garcia was, quote, credible, end quote, observing that his, quote, testimony was internally consistent, externally consistent, end quote. And then again, with, quote, substantial documentation, quote, appeared free of embellishment. This is the judge talking, ladies and gentlemen. The judge further found that there was, quote, a clear probability of future persecution if Garcia returned to El Salvador, hence the order. The judge therefore ordered that Garcia had, quote, not to be deported to El Salvador under 8 U.S. Section 123. The government never appealed this order, so it became final, which means it can no longer be appealed. Since Garcia had lived with his family in Maryland, working full-time as a union sheet metal worker and dutifully appearing for his annual check-ins with immigration authorities, he most recently appeared as of this year, January 2025. This guy, according to all documents I can find, according to court documents, according to the judge, has done everything he should do. On March 12th, get this, March 12th this year, right? Garcia was arrested in front of his 5-year-old son by ICE officers who falsely told him that, quote, his status had changed. That's what they told this man. Hey, you got to change the status. We're arresting you. 3 days later, Garcia was allowed to tell his wife that he was being deported to the Terrorism Confinement Center, what they call in El Salvador as CECOT, C-E-C-O-T in El Salvador. Ms. Sura, his wife, has not heard from her husband since, but she has seen him in news photographs and videos of prisoners inside the actual prison. Can you imagine that? Imagine the horror this lady has to be feeling. On March 21st, plaintiff, which of course is his wife and by extension him, filed suit moving for a temporary restraining order. The complaint and motion seek the same relief, quote, and ordering defendants to take all steps reasonably available to them, proportionate to the gravity of the ongoing harm to return Garcia to the United States. The government opposed this request despite acknowledging that Garcia's removal to El Salvador, violated the 2019 order granted by this judge and they admitted that they failed. They called it an administrative error. Isn't that interesting, right? It says Office Director Robert L. Kerna admitted that ICE was aware of this grant of withholding of removal at the time Garcia's removal from the United States. At the time they removed him. Can you believe that? He was aware of the order, but the hell with it. Go ahead and deport him anyways. Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot have this in the United States. If these facts are true, and I'm reading you sworn testimony by officers of the court as to what transpired and what happened and what the record shows, it cannot be allowed. It cannot be allowed to happen. After plaintiffs filed their complaint, defendant Kristi Noem, we know Kristi Noem now is the head of the Homeland Security here in the United States, visited that prison, CECOT, but took no steps to secure Garcia's return. The district court held a hearing April 4th. At the hearing, the government conceded the facts that the plaintiff, Garcia, should not have been removed. At the end of the hearing, the court entered identical written and oral orders granting plaintiff's motion, which it construed as seeking a preliminary injunction. What is going on here? This is absolutely insanity, folks. Absolute insanity. And it's anarchy. I mean, this is the absence of the rule of law. And Donald Trump and his administration should know better. They should do better. Now, I mentioned that I was going to share with you briefly what the Supreme Court said. And I want to make sure I'm very clear about this as to what the Supreme Court said. I don't want there to be any misunderstanding. I want you guys to have all the facts as I keep alluding to. Let me share this, then I'll go to the comments here and we'll get you the information that you need. So here we go. Now, this is from the United States Supreme Court's website. This is the findings of the United States Supreme Court. It's really just that simple. There's not a whole lot more to add to it. We're going to take a brief look at this so that we all are singing from the same sheet of music. Let me make sure we get everything working the way it should work. Okay, let me check these comments real quick, and then we're going to take a quick peek at this here. Okay. Zach, I like your comment about tired of the back and forth. I totally agree with this. American Nana, always keep an open mind or you'll become a crazy one-sided. American Nana, that is such a perfect comment. I mean, that is spot on. How many times on this channel have we looked at these woke Democrats and we've told ourselves, man, look how crazy these people look. Look how crazy that some of these, like AOC and some of these other Democrats. I can't think of that one lady that's facing criminal charges right now, or at least a probe. That crazy black lady out of Texas, Jasmine Crockett or something like that. How many times we looked at these people and we're like, what are they thinking? How can they justify this? How can they continue doing what they're doing? How can they allow women sports to be invaded by man? Why would you allow a man to play a woman in boxing or in any sports or in swimming? I mean, we look at these woke Democrats and we think they're on another planet. Well, what I'm getting at here is we need to make sure we don't engage in the same type of behavior. We don't need to drink that nutty Kool-Aid. And this is nutty. If there's not other facts out there I don't know about, this is nutty, plain and simple. So thanks for that comment, American Ann. I think you're on point with that. Matt, my friend, good to see you as always. It says, let's see, OA visa in Thailand, FBI background check with a possible birth certificate, possible verification of income, with possible proof of, I'm not sure what you're talking about there, Matt. You can feel free to explain it. But I appreciate your comment just the same. You go on to say, United States is so stupid, we got sold out. Ross Perot warned us. Yeah, I loved Ross Perot. Amen to that. You're exactly right. Yeah, I don't understand the comment either, Zach. That's what I was just saying. But, man, I'm glad to have you here anyways. Let's see, NAFTA, I think that's North America Free Trade Agreement and most favorable trading status with China. Yes, thank God Donald Trump is intervening and all that. I mean, what a blessing from God when you get right down to it. See, this is what I'm talking about, man. We need to stay focused on the important stuff. You have China now saying, hey, we're not going to ship any more rare earth minerals to the United States. They're already deciding they're going to double down and start fighting this out with us right now. That China threat is real. I've been saying for quite some time on this channel, we need to totally cut out China, and I have no problem doing that. We need to go ahead and bring them to their knees right now. They made it clear. We're going to war over China at some point. They said before 2027. I mean, I don't know why people don't believe these people when they say something. That Xing or Xi that runs it over there, he's a guy that pretty well says what he intends to do, and for the most part, he does it. It's unfortunate, but that's where he said this is all going. I know the Chinese Communist government announced recently that they have doubled their spending on their military. Thank God President Trump is the man for such a time as this, as the Bible would say, and I wish him every success with this tariff stuff. I mean, we've been sold out way too long, for far too long, and I just hope it's not too late. We are still 40% of the world's economy, which is a drastic decrease from where we used to be. But hopefully, ladies and gentlemen, we're on the right path. And that's all the more reason why this type of nonsense needs to be stopped. And I'll comment about that further in a minute. And then, Zach, it's gotten to the point that even sworn testimonies. Yeah, I agree. And Zach, that's a good point. As I have said, or maybe I didn't say, if anybody's got documentation to the contrary to what I'm reading right here, let me have it. Let me see it. And if it's the case that what I'm reading is perjury, it's false testimony, I'll be talking about it on this channel. I can assure you that. I hope we get to the bottom of what's ever going on. But I think, in my opinion, what's probable as far as what's going on is you have a bunch of news reporters. I mentioned Judge Janine recently. I think you have a lot of people hearing something and then they're simply parroting the information that they have heard from someone else. Or you have someone on YouTube that is an attorney. Ooh, he's an attorney. And this attorney is pretty well parroting the same thing. Or he's just saying whatever they think they need to say so they get a lot of viewers. I mean, I just don't know. I don't know, but I do know what I'm able to find out right here. Matt says no other country in the world would allow this. Yes, exactly. All this for one guy that's not an American. He has no money and is competing for employment. Matt, I agree with you in part. I agree with you that he should not be here. At least initially, should not be here. Now, I have to qualify it. A judge has heard his case and said he is to stay here in the United States, that he's not to be returned to El Salvador because he has a legitimate fear from rival gangs or whatever the ruling actually said. I want to tell you guys something. I don't know if we've talked about it enough, but we will in the future. We need immigration. We need legal immigration. The United States, like many countries, is facing a very serious population decrease. And I know that sounds weird to even talk about. When I was a kid, like all y'all, we kept hearing about how overpopulated the world was and how we may run out of food and people might be starving. I heard a documentary just the other day that's saying just the opposite now. We might have ghost towns right here in the United States. There's nobody to fill them, nobody to use them. And because of our immigration, the United States is not as in a tenuous spot as a lot of the countries, a lot of the world is. For example, this population decrease might make war with China more likely now because China's population is still very large. But in the next 40, 50 years, their population is expected, get this, it used to be like 4 billion people or whatever it was. It's supposed to be less than the United States has right now for approximately 350, 360 million people. Can you imagine that? If you do the math, it kind of makes sense. They had a one-child policy. So if you have two individuals and all they can do is procreate and have one child, and most of the families there were opting for a male offspring because they wanted to pass on the family name to, through their son. So they got a lot of families with only one child, and the child is a male. And you can imagine the women that are there are far outnumbered by the guys. And on top of all of that, ladies and gentlemen, you have the women, a lot of the women that are there are highly educated. And, statistics show the more educated a female is, generally, the less children she has. I'm not saying it's good. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying what the facts are. You can make of it what you want. But the United States has a very serious population problem, as does most of the world. However, the United States, if we continue with our immigration the way it has been, is expected to have no issue whatsoever. But again, with China, they may not even be able to repel their own borders. Russia is having the same problem. It takes 1.1 million soldiers in Russia just to repel their borders. And the way the population is decreasing in Russia, they're not even sure they're going to be able to maintain an army of that size. That is probably one of the many reasons that Russia ended up invading Ukraine. Number one reason, of course, was because of the NATO expansion. I don't want to get off target, but I'm just stating that this population is a serious case. So understand the takeaway is that it's kind of counterintuitive. It's kind of like why being fat is a good thing. There are good things to have an extra weight on you, but we're always told, no, it's bad, bad, bad. And for the most part, it probably is bad. However, when you look at the population, the illegal immigration population even, it does have good consequences for the United States. I'm not advocating for that, so please do not misconstrue anything I'm saying or misunderstand anything I'm saying. We need to have laws and we need to enforce our laws. But at the same time, there is a positive spin to having a increased population, even if it is by illegal immigration. It's just that way. But Matt, your point that no other country would tolerate this stuff is that applicable in so many different arenas. I totally agree with you 100%. So thank you for that comment. So let's continue on right here, and let me just briefly go over these U.S. Supreme papers. I'm not going to go much into it because we have talked about this on yesterday's live video. If you'd like more information on that, please look under the live tab and feel free to watch yesterday's video where I did read and go through most of the Supreme Court ruling. Now, they keep talking about this being a 9-0 ruling eventually, and it was a 9-0 ruling. However, there's some caveats, as always. Mostly the liberal justices, we all are very familiar with them, had somewhat of, I don't want to quite call it a dissenting opinion, but they went along to get along, in my opinion, on the 9-0 ruling. And they state the facts right here. March 15, 2025, the United States removed Garcia from the United States to El Salvador, which he is currently detained in CCOT. The United States acknowledges that Garcia was subject to a withholding order forbidding his removal to El Salvador. That's the Supreme Court of the United States giving us the facts. You don't have to listen to the news. You don't have to listen to anybody except watch your own two eyeballs. Read what is directly from the U.S. Supreme Court, directly from their site. The United States it goes on. The United States acknowledges that Garcia was subject to the withholding order forbidding his removal, and that the removal to El Salvador was therefore illegal. Boom! They admit it was illegal. The United States represents that the removal to El Salvador was a result of a, quote, an administrative error. The United States alleges, however, that Garcia has been found to be a member of the MS-13 gang, a designated foreign terrorist organization, and that his return to the United States would impose a threat to public safety. Garcia responds that he is not a member of MS-13 and that he has lived safely in the United States with his family for a decade and has never been charged with the crime. On Friday, April 14th, the United States, for the District Court of Maryland, entered an order directing the government to, quote unquote, facilitate and effectuate the return of Garcia. Two words that have very different meanings, but they were under order from that district court judge to facilitate and effectuate his return. Basically, make it happen, Mr. President. On the morning, April 7th, the United States filed this application to vacate the district court's order. The Chief Justice entered an administrative stay and subsequently referred the application to the court. That's saying, in short, that originally they basically entered a TRO, temporary restraining order, to stop that order from going into effect until the court had time to review the entire case. They wanted to make sure that the president's authority was not imposed. They want to make sure everything basically come to a freeze, as they do in certain cases, so they can make a ruling. The application is granted in part and denied in part. You heard the White House just say, we had a major victory. It was 9-0, and, you know, we beat them over the head, right? That's effectively what they're saying. And that's not true. You read it right here. The application is granted in part and denied in part, subject to the direction of this order. Due to the administrative stay issued by the Chief Justice, the deadline imposed by the district courts now passed. To that extent, the application is effectively granted in part, and the deadline in the challenged order is no longer effective, meaning the time has went by, so it's kind of a moot point. It goes on. The rest of the district court's order remains in effect, but requires clarification. So they're remanding it, aka sending it back to the district court, to the lower court. And they want the district court to clarify what she meant by her order. The order properly requires the government to, quote unquote, facilitate Garcia's release from custody in El Salvador and to ensure that his case is handled as it would have been had he not been improperly sent to El Salvador. The intended scope of the term effectuate in district court order is, however, unclear and may exceed the district court's authority. When the court tells someone to effectively effectuate, they basically are saying you do what has to be done to bring him back here. Now, some people would argue that means invading the country of El Salvador if you had to break into the prison and bring him back here. I think that's ridiculous. I guess theoretically that's possible, but you heard the Trump administration's official, I think it was Stephen Miller, make that particular comment. That's not what would be within the meaning of this word, in my opinion, based on this particular court's ruling. All right. It says, it goes on to say, to the extent the emergency application, okay, the intended scope of effectuating the district court is, however, unclear and may exceed the authority. Okay, that is good news for the Trump administration on that one word. The district court should clarify its directive, but due regard for the difference owed to the executive branch in the conduct of foreign affairs, aka don't step on Article 2, the president's ability to conduct his job, specifically foreign affairs. In other words, you don't want all these lowly court district judges to say, oh, Mr. President, pull out of the agreement with Saudi Arabia. I mean, that just is nonsense. That's crazy talk. But that is the concern. And of course, the Supreme Court is very, very deliberate in making sure that they're keeping an eye on anything that would overstep the Trump's administration, the executive branch's ability to conduct foreign affairs. I mean, that's pretty well common sense. For its part, the government should be prepared to share, here's the key word, what it can concerning the steps it has taken and the prospect for further steps. The order herefore entered by the Chief Justice is vacated. So the old order by the Chief Justice vacated. This is the new one. And this is where you have the liberals, says Justice Sotomayor, Justice Kagan, Justice Jackson joining in. So that's pretty well it. I mean, I'm not going to go into the dissent-ish language here. It's not technically a dissent because it's 9-0. But all that stuff that you heard Stephen Miller say earlier, this was a solid win for the country and for the Trump administration, and it's full steam ahead or whatever. That's not what the Supreme Court said. The Supreme Court basically said, I don't like the word effectuate. We're going to somewhat scratch that, but we want it to go back to the district court judge, and we want her to scrutinize that. And as a matter of fact, as I'm speaking right now, that hearing is going on, or it had to conclude real recently. I know that they did have a hearing this evening, and they were dripping the news out. So hopefully, Lord willing, I have some commentary on that tomorrow. But my suspicion is the judge is not going to give up. That district court judge is going to keep drilling hard on the Trump administration and their surrogates to get this guy home. It's really just as simple. By the way, do you see any language in this document so far that said this guy is an MS-13 member? I don't see it. Do you see any ruling in here by the Supreme Court this guy is a member or was a member of MS-13? No, because there's no finding of that in here. And had there been, I can assure you, it would have been all over this document, and the Supreme Court would have made reference to this particular document. So again, you can go ahead and you can take a look at this document in your own time. Now, I want to move on to one other subject. Remember we talked earlier about the original arrest back in 2019 when this individual, this Garcia guy, he was basically brought into custody because of two specific facts, right? Number one was this police officer that wrote an affidavit saying, oh, this guy is affiliated with M16 or the MS-16 gang, right? And then they had this confidential informant that was given basically the same testimony, saying, hey, this guy is a known, he's a gang member. He's part of MS-16. Well, take a look at this here. Here is a brand new story. There's been whispers of this, all right, but this is coming out even more so in the mainstream press, dated April 15th, 2025. This is on the newrepublic.com website. Trump's case against man deported in error just took another big hit. Trump board claims that Garcia was in MS-13, but new information concerning the local cop who attested to that charge at that time raises fresh questions about it. Apparently, this boy's got his own problems, as the Trump administration officials seek to defend their refusal to return Garcia to the United States after deporting him in error. That's their official line, even though they're saying other things to us. One of the government's chief justifications has been that he was a member of the MS-13 gang. One Trump official after another has lodged that charge, although Garcia denies this, and the evidence for this is what they call conspicuously thin. This notion that Garcia posed a major public safety threat inside the United States has become Trump world's primary excuse for denying him basic due process and leaving him in a maximum security prison in El Salvador known for human rights abuses. This includes apparently defying the Supreme Court order to facilitate his return. All right, so I'm not going to get into that. What I do want to get into is this. But the administration's case that Garcia is a gang member and a violent criminal is running into even more trouble. The Maryland police officer who formally attested to Garcia's supposed gang affiliation way back in 2019, friends, when he was detained the first time, was subsequently suspended from the force for a serious transgression. Allegedly, this officer was giving confidential information about a case to a sex worker the New Republic has established. This officer, apparently a senior detective on the Garcia case in 2019, is named Ivan Mendez, according to the information provided by Garcia's lawyer at the time. And it goes on to say that this individual, Lucia, who is also a member of his current legal team, Mendez, was subsequently indicted for this offense, pled guilty, and received probation. Isn't that interesting, huh? It says by itself, of course, this does not settle whether Garcia was ever in MS-13, but it's butterness argument that the process designated him a gang member was shoddy and riddled with flaws from the outset. And now you have one of the primary individuals involved in this case, this officer that came forward and signed this affidavit saying, hey, I have reason to believe this guy is involved with MS-13. Obviously, this guy's credibility is now all shot to what for the reasons we just talked about. And listen, I will tell you, ladies and gentlemen, that it's been my experience that when you see one form of corruption from some individual, public official, whatever, and they get caught on one thing, I can almost guarantee there's more there. You know what I'm talking about? It just happens to be he got caught on this one. That does not mean under any credible scenario that this is the only thing this individual has ever done. This is just, in my mind, just means this is the one thing that he has got caught on. Does that make any sense where I'm going with that? So some of the exact comments that I were receiving was basically, hey, the guy that is an actual attorney said all these things, so it must be true. That is absolutely false. Matter of fact, if you look in the description of this particular video, I have pretty well written a little synopsis here. I'm going to try to paste it over in the chat. I'm not sure if it will copy over. Let me see if this will copy over so y'all can look at this yourself. I'm not sure if it will divide it up. There you go. I got the actual truth, and then here is the final ruling, so y'all can read this. Feel free to make any comments you might have pertaining to this. And then I went into exactly what the administration is doing, my friends. Unfortunately, my opinion is they're cherry picking this bond denial. They're morphing it into something more sinister and using it to suggest that this guy was effectively rejected twice from getting out of jail or incarceration. And this is factually false. At best, it's factually misleading. I think it's false. Clearly, it's false. So I wrote here, it's like saying someone was denied justice twice, but they were denied bail. It wasn't justice. They were denied bail, even though they were later found innocent at trial. So when you hear the news, when you hear these talking heads saying, hey, twice the court found that he needed to stay in jail or that they wouldn't let him out because of this or because of that, it's just a lie. It's a complete 100% lie. He was kept in jail because the judge would not grant him bond based on these faulty, now apparently faulty affidavits submitted by this police officer that we just read this article on. And of course, the old anonymous source. Isn't that something? So it is what it is, my friends. I think it's pretty shoddy and it's pretty suspicious. And I had someone ask me too, yes, he could be deported legally to another country, but not El Salvador. But remember, if he was going to be deported by this administration to another country, that's perfectly legal. They can do that, but they have to give Mr. Garcia due process first. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not here coming out in support of someone that might be a terrorist. If this guy was a terrorist, I hope he rots in hell, and I hope he rots in this jail. It's just that simple. But we are a country of laws, even though he came here illegally. Hey, at some level, do you blame these people? If you have a president like Joe Biden or these other presidents that basically say, hey, the border's open, come on in. Or they tell you, hey, the border's closed, but they give you a wink, come on in, like Biden and Kamala Harris were doing. Hey, I'd be across the border too, and I'm sure you would too. So technically, they broke the law coming to the country, but they're still entitled to due process, as each and every one of us is entitled to due process. And if you don't think that someone that is an illegal is entitled to due process, ask yourself this question. What happens if I shows up at your house, picks you up, and says, oh, you're an illegal, we're going to deport you, and you don't get any due process, even though you are a legal American citizen? You see, that is the reason why there has to be some type of due process. And frankly, that's what the Supreme Court in their ruling also said, is that the Trump administration was allowed to continue deporting individuals over this, what is it, 1797 Alien Enemies Act or whatever they call it. Hey, you can continue with it according to U.S. Supreme Court, but you have to give these individuals some type of due process in front of at least an administrative law judge is effectively what it boils down to. American Anna says, I think they knew they made a mistake, but they can't have egg on the face. Yeah, I think that's exactly right, American Anna. I think that's what it boils down to. I think that the president of El Salvador, he's got the reputation as a strong man, and he wants to do whatever Donald Trump wants him to do. And I think that's great. I mean, it's good to have friends, right? I don't blame him for that. And he wants to maintain this strong image. And the president also, the president of El Salvador has, I don't know if you call it a saying or whatever, but it's just kind of known that once you go to that prison, you never come out of that prison. It's just part of the scare tactics, if you will, to make these members or these potential gang members in El Salvador not join a gang, first of all, and if they're in their gang, to stop engaging in criminal behavior. I mean, it's effective. I get it. I understand it. And then when you look at Donald Trump and his situation, it's kind of the same thing, right? He's got this macho, tough guy image, and I like it. I don't have a problem with that. Sometimes, ladies and gentlemen, it's hard for people to admit that there's been a mistake. There's been a serious problem, and they just keep doubling down on it. And it's very unfortunate. I hope President Trump does not keep drinking that Kool-Aid. Zach says, I don't think gang membership can be proved. Circumstantial evidence must be used to reach a reasonable conclusion. I agree with you on that, Zach. There's no daylight between us on that. In this case, there was no evidence other than this crooked cop's evidence and a confidential source. I mean, how do you feel about that? Do you think that's fair or even reasonable to have some kind of charge levied against you or your family members, and all they have is some type of affidavit from an apparent crooked cop and a confidential source? I mean, the Constitution guarantees we have a right to face our accusers. This individual didn't even face his confidential source. I hope that makes sense. I hope y'all see exactly where I'm coming from that. But I get it. You know, none of us want crime. None of us want gang members here. I get it, ladies and gentlemen. Again, no daylight between us on that. But ladies and gentlemen, I submit we have to have the rule of law. We have to embrace our Constitution. And even though sometimes it's painful, we have to stand up for the ideas and the covenants in our Constitution. It's one of the many things that make our country a great country. At any rate, that's my sense. That's my 2 cents in it for what it's worth. I appreciate y'all visiting with me today. If you haven't hit the thumbs up button yet, please take a minute, hit the thumbs up button. And of course, you can always subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, so you can be informed when I have another video release or I go live. That way you can join the conversation if you choose. I would appreciate it if you take a minute, go ahead and leave a comment. I'm curious if you agree or disagree with what I have to say here today. And at a minimum, I feel privileged to have the opportunity to at least give you, each and every one, something to think about and something to consider when you're processing this whole story, if you will, through your mind. I hope that helps everyone out. Like to always say, my friends, keep that mind free. Never give up. Until next time, I am J.R. Dukes.